The perfect storm that new Treasurer Jim Chalmers says is about to hit energy prices and availability has actually been brewing for years and should surprise no one. We're talking about non-stop gas at the moment, but a lot of people have forgotten how we got here, despite what Labor's new Energy Minister Chris Bowen said today, claiming that the climate and energy wars are over.
The climate wars are over and the energy wars are over. We will do what is necessary and we won't shy away from hard decisions. But those decisions will be based on evidence, good policy, not on partisan politics, bickering, climate wars and culture wars.
Sure, the immediate catalyst is the Ukraine war and countries trying to find alternatives to Russian oil and gas. But the world is now so gas dependent because it's also increasingly renewables dependent, and you can't have intermittent wind and solar power without gas backing it up to firm the power supply, so you have power when the wind doesn't blow and of course the sun doesn't shine. Don't forget, Europe's energy crisis didn't start on February 24 when Russia invaded Ukraine. It started back before Christmas, when a prolonged wind drought coupled with the usual grey European winter meant that renewable energy wasn't available. Keeping the system going when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine meant using much more gas. And that's what sent gas prices through the roof and put massive pressure on supply long before Putin's tanks crossed the border. That's what first caused Britain to bring back old coal-fired power plants and the Germans to rethink closing their nuclear ones. AEMO, the Australian energy market operator, was scrambling today with rationing inflicted on our big power users. Now, rationing is what it is. They call it demand management. And there were threats to invoke bans on gas exports in response to the deep cold snap of recent days. But don't think this is just extraordinary measures for extraordinary times. This, I'm sorry to say, is the new normal. And it's the new normal because it's the inevitable result of a power system run for more than a decade, not to produce more affordable and reliable power, but to reduce emissions. It's why this pain is hitting Western countries that have gone big on climate zealotry, as Greg Sheridan will explain shortly, but not places like China and India, where emissions are going up and up, but power is coal-based, cheap and constant. At every step in this process, countries like ours have been promised that more renewables would mean cheaper power. Well, it's a great green lie. Household power bills, in fact, have doubled over the past decade and are set to keep soaring because the more renewables that are in the system, the more gas backup that's needed. And higher demand for gas is coming just at a time when the green movement insists there can be no new gas exploration and no new gas production. Over the past 2 decades, coal has gone from supplying 80% to just 55% of Australia's total electricity. Wind and solar have gone from nothing to 25%. And gas has gone from 10 to 20% because that's what is available, needs to be turned on quickly as the wind drops or the sun goes behind a cloud. Because by its very nature, gas powers up faster than coal. With the new South Australian Labor government doubling down on the hysteria of all of this by just declaring this week a climate emergency, backed in shamefully, I must admit, by the Liberals, Australia's gas dependency will only grow. Now, paradoxically, the Greens used to favour gas because it was much cleaner and much less emitting than coal. Then they decided that it was just another fossil fuel they had to demonise and ban no less than coal. Indeed, lots of left-dominated councils in Victoria are now even demanding an end to gas heaters, gas cooktops, even the humble barbecue. Driving all of this is a much bigger prize than just reducing emissions. In the end, it's the whole capitalist system that the Green Marxists are against. They're just harnessing the public's green sentiment for Marxist ends. Let's be clear why there's now a gas shortage. because green-tinged governments have made it harder and harder to prospect for gas and to bring gas projects to market. In Victoria, as an example, Daniel Andrews doesn't just block new gas projects, he's banned new gas exploration, not just fracking, but exploration for gas supplies that don't need fracking. Given the state of Victoria's budget, it's madness to forego the export dollars of gas, if nothing else. The global coal price, like the global gas price, is also skyrocketing, in part because it's so hard to open new coal mines. The last big new coal mine to open in Australia, Adani, in Queensland, had first to suffer through a decade of protests, blockades, boycotts, and action in the courts from publicly funded green activists. Coal-fired power plants are becoming old and in need of repair, precisely because none have been built in Australia for the past 15 years, because activists, well, they've pushed the banks not to invest in them, and weak companies decide it's all too hard and walk away. They walk away not because coal is expensive, it remains by far the cheapest way to generate 24/7 power, but because of the political risk inherent in long-term fossil fuel investment. We don't tackle the crisis of expensive and unreliable electricity by demanding more wind and more solar. Green energy is not the answer. In fact, green energy is the problem, precisely because it needs fossil fuel backup, yet the green media has made it even harder and harder to get that backup. Now, we've got to get serious. What's more important, reducing emissions or keeping the lights on? Because we can't keep having both unless, of course, we act like adults and have an honest debate in this country about nuclear power.
What we have to do now is get the attitude change in the public that you want to get baseload power up and running, you want to get your coal-fired power stations up and running, you have to seriously consider nuclear, because the alternative is coming to you in the mail, and it's called the power bill, and it's going through the roof.
He's right, of course, but where was he last year when the Nationals caved in to Scott Morrison on his 2050 net zero madness without first demanding that nuclear power was on the table? This crisis is now and it's real, but little today from the Energy Minister in terms of a way forward.
We are not today ruling out or in any particular action going forward over and above what I've announced today.
What does it even mean? Even the Extinction Rebellion zealots admit that their climate apocalypse is not until at least the end of the decade. Unfortunately, our energy apocalypse is here and now. I know which one we should be worried about most, which is our first and immediate focus, and it's not the 1.3% of global emissions that Australia is responsible for. It's the 100% of our power supply that modern life depends on.